This is Defacto Review, where we run down the top news events from the previous week, and then we debate what happens next. Hi, I'm Terrence Edwards, and with us tonight is our host, Jargal Defacto. Hey, Jargal.
Hi. Good evening.
How was your week?
Well, politically very interesting week.
Specifically Friday evening.
Yes. In particular when the major things are now happening within the walls of the political party, not particularly necessarily within the parliamentarian or the institutions.
Now, right now, Parliament's in its extraordinary session. Do you know how long will this last and when the actual official session will open?
Well, we have a spring and fall sessions.
Sure.
And the fall sessions, depending on the needs, they call extraordinary sessions.
Yeah.
Which was the case last week for Thursday, Friday, and they will continue this year, this time as well. To the end of the month, they will start ordinary sessions.
Yeah, officially.
But whether it is ordinary or not ordinary, the issues they discuss these days are crucial in many sense.
Because of the imbalances in the economy.
First time, yes.
Yeah, direct attention.
First time Mongolia is going to increase taxes for last many years, major taxes. There have been several proposals to increase many taxes, 8 of them, but now they have been discussing and there are only few, but however very substantial taxes are remaining, and they will discuss it again. From Monday, standing committees of the parliament will discuss the issues all the way through Wednesday, and on Thursday they will make final decisions. First hearing have gone, now the second hearing is coming.
And that's some of what we'll be talking about this evening, but for now, let's look at what we have for our program tonight. Parliament has passed a new amendment to the 2016 budget that raises some taxes while cutting some social welfare spending. It's in an effort to bring order to Mongolia's runaway deficit. The amendment from Finance Minister Defacto Chojul hikes income tax for anyone earning more than 2.5 million tugriks a month, and that's a hike of 25%. It also raises the tax on alcohol and tobacco by 20% and reduces the scope of the universal 20,000 tugrik children allowances to just 60% of all Mongolians under the age of 18 years. Completely cut are the allowances to university students, while a proposed hike on social insurance payments was omitted by the parliament. So in your mind, Jargal, which is going to be the harder pill to swallow? These tax hikes or the cuts in social spending?
Well, good questions. This government has a big problem with current deficit. They need money.
20%. Or now down to 18%, I'm not sure.
Well, not that substantial change.
Yeah.
However, now they have to pay a lot interest rate because it is accumulation of foreign debt through bonds, through the guarantee of development bank loan, and plus they have been borrowing a lot from domestic market.
Yeah.
And banks own a lot government bonds. So altogether, government is paying just only for interest about 20% of the current income of budget, and it will keep going all the way to half of them. Half of the revenue will be paid for the interests of all type of debts, government debts.
So it's a deficit to GDP ratio of between 18 and 20% at the moment.
Yes, and instead of informing us or taking any measure to get paid on the loans they have borrowed from the bond money to whoever had been borrowing. They are just now decided to now tax everybody. It is, you know, this is like it's very fake event, major step. And I wrote last week an article called "Fake Stun," which will be tomorrow in English in UB Post, describing what's going on in the country in terms of political governance. Well, in general, it's very sad news that the government first thing is to make higher taxes. Taxes means they are cutting away from you have earned legitimately for the purposes that we don't know very much clearly how much efficiently they use the money from taxes. And this is very sad news for people who honestly working in this country. We have, of course, a lot of corrupt people. Instead of talking to them, now they decided which is easier, to tax everybody. But any tax policy, any new tax hike has first sequences and then secondary sequences. And the first consequences is very short term. It looks like they are increasing tax revenue from the first hand, though it is decreasing the tax basis. But if you go to look at for longer run to see the long-term results, consequences of that tax. For example, there was a case when they had a windfall tax on gold, 66% on above certain prices. They have imposed that tax a few years ago.
And it really halted the gold industry at the time.
We used to have 20 tons of gold coming to the central bank for sale from the companies, but then it suddenly became only 2. So 18 tons of gold was smuggling.
Yeah,
illegal.
Because as much as stopped, you also have to assume there was a lot of black market trading.
They haven't seen that the secondary consequences. The same now is happening with this 30 million Tugriks over money will be taxed now, 25%. 30 million is about $1,000 a month income, which is a very basic income for people who had studied in the Western countries, who paid for their MBA, master degrees, whatever, university degrees. If they don't earn $1,000 a month at least, it has no sense. Even there is no return on their education. Plus, it will be very hard for people who is working on mining projects for 2 weeks in a row, then have another 7 days a week, 7 days rest and come back. These people are earning more than $1,000 a month, and mostly the most hardworking, most talented, skilled, educated Mongolians are to be taxed. Which is, if in terms of secondary consequences, many of Mongolians may leave the country, may change the job, they will not stay long if they will have a less salary than $1,000 a month. Plus, it means that many foreign employees will go out from the country, because it is the same for them to pay 25% tax on that, and then in the U.S., because they mostly receive way more than 30,000.
It's going to break that easily.
If it's 100 million Tugriks, then 30 and 70 million, 25%, they are paying a lot of money, 15 million Tugriks. So that's why I believe many companies the companies are struggling anyway now, right after mining a boom bust. But now, particular few companies who are in the services, in particular for long term, they are just staying here in the long term because they have invested a lot already. So those companies will have a hard time. So basically, this is very bad signal for talents, skilled people, foreigners. Basically, it's closing down foreign investment to the country. And secondly, I think it will decrease the productivity in the society, because now people are not interested to earn more than certain money because it's taxed anyway. So they will, up to 30 million 2 weeks, then the rest they will, whatever, they will do something else, but they will not be any more productive. Another point is not only it will repel the foreign investors, also Mongolian domestic investors will go abroad to look for better chances. Maybe through capital market they will buy shares in other countries. And next one is people tend to spend many things for just things they don't need much. As soon as these sort of things are tax exempted now, they try by all means to try to pay less taxes and to buy as much as possible, even if it is tax exempted. So we will have more West in the country. And the last point I want to share with you is we will increase more cash in the circulations. And it's very bad because it will increase the black market. We call it gray economy. It will decrease the turnover of money.
Unfiled, unreported income that won't go taxed.
If more money goes through black market, gray economy, and less it goes through bank, then it is very bad for economy because now we have the speed of the turnover is much lower. So this sort of secondary consequences of that policy are expected, and it will happen as soon as they adopt that law, and hopefully they have not yet adopted, but particularly on that issue, they will have some, I think they should have some rationale on that. But we're not sure because the People's Party, ruling party, internal meeting, which was disclosed, right? Which was close to the media. They agree that they will continue with this 25% of income tax, at least the last information I have, and they will discuss it on Monday at the standing committee. So let's see.
As I mentioned last week, it's a hard sell to raise taxes in an economy like this. People are already struggling and you're taking more of their income away. One obvious thing to look at it would be the privatization of government assets. For the short term, that would bring in a bit of revenue, but for the long term, a lot of these are dead weight. They're vacuum cleaners sucking in government revenue, public funds every year. And of course, that would be a nice cost savings for the government if the last government had been successful, but they made a lot of promises to privatize, but I see it as a complete failure.
Before taxing people, they should consider that sales of state-owned enterprises, shares, majority shares, and with the condition that they will continue their businesses as such. And at the end, when the value comes up, they can sell the remaining smaller shares with even a higher price. So this is the way how you sell or privatize state-owned companies through stock market. Hopefully, it is the rational way for them to do so.
I won't be holding my breath.
Okay.
Moving on. The Parliament has failed to pass 8 tax items in the new budget, raising concerns that once again Mongolia is saddled with a disarray or disharmony between the Parliament and the cabinet government. Members of the Mongolian People's Party met privately to get its affairs in order after Parliament's Budget Committee rejected the 8 tax items. Some of what was said during that closed-door meeting was then reported to the local newspaper Ardin Erch, where statements seemed to reveal some disarray between the Parliament and the cabinet. Again, that's the actual lawmakers as opposed to the cabinet under Prime Minister Jargaltolga Erdogan. The General Intelligence Agency is actually now investigating that leak that went to the newspaper. So I assume you looked at these reports. Can you reveal to us some of these statements made that show us that perhaps the legislature and the executive government are not on the same page?
Well, Mr. Nemdorj, who is one of the most influential parliamentarians in People's Party, from the People's Party, he said that this discontent inside of the political party by nomination or nomination to cabinet had created already a lot of disarray among the party, and which is also reflected in relations between cabinet and parliament.
Yeah.
That's what he said. But I read it even beyond him, beyond what he said. I read it between lines, what he said. Basically, there are a lot, I would say, very educated, talented professionals inside of People's Party who are not happy with the nomination of the current political nominees as ministers, vice ministers. And they are just opposing what they are suggesting. And it is logically happening because, as I told before in our program, I see again this People's Party, this internal fight is coming because of nominating people not based on talents, which we were expecting from them.
Political appointments.
Yes, it is their political nominees are mostly based on how much the person had given a donation to its own political party. Because this political party donations, funds, financing are not clear, they never report. We demand it, but they never report. And we see that what's happening with, what by the way happened with the Democratic Party, which destroyed itself at the end. But I think the same is happening with this People's Party. So people are not happy. Some parliament members are not happy that they are not nominated. So they are opposing many issues on one side. On the other side, of course, they see that what we have in our political party program promised are completely different than what now you're going to do. So there are the sort of discussions, hopefully intellectual discussions happening. But one thing was also I observed that at that internal meeting, the press says that the current Prime Minister said, before you have been talking whatever you wanted, anyway, everywhere. It is not anymore the case. That's what he said to his own political party members. So it's going to be tough for people who has different opinion. So it's a matter of this party, internal democracy issue, as well as this corruption issues I am raising.
Okay. Well, we have a lot more to talk about, so we're going to move right along to the next topic. The proposed salary cuts to judges and prosecutors has some worried about how it will affect their independence. Already, the government has made $3.2 billion in savings from the 30% salary cuts to high officials in government. And the Jargal-Tolga Erdogan-backed government has proposed even more salary cuts in government now in the courts. A judicial society has already reached out to government officials not to pass the amendment, but some worry that this lobbying, and if it's actually adhered to, if they follow that request, will be detrimental to the court's independence. So I'm wondering, who has to weigh in on this decision for the courts? Is it a cabinet decision? Is it a parliament decision?
Well, that's the problem. We don't see much difference between parliament and cabinet.
With a lot of overlapping.
Overlapping, and that's very bad because at the end, theoretically, the cabinet should take responsibility for every executive actions, right? But not the case in Mongolia because this parliament is making decisions on behalf of the executive power. So we don't know how to get responsible for this sort of decisions, one. Secondly, about this judge issue. Yeah, the judge salary was, for example, 4 times more than a procureur, we call it procureur.
Yeah.
Or maybe 8 times more than the inspector, for example, police inspector.
Big gap.
Yes, in big gap, and they are not happy because we are working in the same system. Why somebody should have 5 times more? That's the big discontent among this judicial power in the country. But this one, if you go like this, case by case, decrease in salary here, increase in salary here, it doesn't work. It in other times show that how much not mature are political and economic institutions in the country, because these institutions are not working inclusively.
Yeah.
Because they are working for only small group in extractive way, right? That's the direct result of not maturing political and economic institutions. Instead of, for example, giving somebody a particular salary, there should be a certain pyramid of the scope of incentives, salary level of public officers.
How long you've held a position, your
exactly how
experience
experienced it is, how efficient you are, what is the productivity, etc.
Sure.
That clear system is theoretically existing, but practically does not. And that's one of the way how Mongolian government is being selected, or based on not talent, not merit-based. It is political loyalty based nomination. That's why every time when we change power, they change almost completely whole public offices.
Clean slate, yeah.
And the restructuring all ministries according to their needs, not to the needs of the economy, unfortunately. And that's, I think, one of these issues happening, and we should have normal political and economic institutions working in Mongolia until it works like this, a normal way. We will have this problem, and it cannot be working like this just because these political parties have corruptions.
Yeah.
It is they are redistributing political powers based on how much you have donated to your political party. So money talks here. So that's why they even don't think about having responsible people who had misused a lot of public funds. That's the concern.
So if the concern is that following their request and keeping their salaries or changing the salaries the way they would like, it would have the courts owing a favor to the MPP. But how would you say this current status quo is as far as independence in the courts?
They say it is independent, but for years during coalition or separate governance of each these two political parties, they were always influencing on nominees, always positions in this judicial system. So unfortunately, that closes that provision of independence, complete independence of judicial power. So because you see the salary system, you see the opposition system, now you see what's going on now. So everything dependent on parliament members. Now this Mr. Nyamdorj said that now each judge coming to, they have separated, they have divided themselves, and they were coming to parliamentary members, asking them not to vote for decreasing their salary.
Yeah.
So this is the way how they make a lobby. I understand them, because they have receiving certain salary, then they're decreasing. But however, it is again, we need institutional approach. For that, we need very clear leadership, which is not the case. We have again full of conflict of interests, power in the People's Party.
Yeah, and it's strange for me to hear people raising this issue when there already has been complaints of a lack of independence since the president's appointing these judges to begin with. That's always been a common complaint that I've heard.
Well, it is a lot of things. There are several things to make better here in this system, and I think it's a completely separate conversation about the system itself. But today, just the very fact that now they are decreasing completely their salary they used to have for the last 3 years, 3.5 million Tuareg per month. Actually 1.5 with the current rate, 1.5 or 1,600 US dollar, which is not that much high.
All right, moving along, we have to our final topic of the evening. The Jargeltolga Erdenbach government has proposed taxes on wealthier citizens, including a tax on interest rates from savings, to dig the country out of its economic hole. Proposed legislation includes a 10% tax on the interest earned from savings accounts holding more than 100 million tugrik, as well as a tax on homeowners with real estate larger than 150 square meters. The tax on savings would reportedly generate up to 20 billion a year for the state. So this bracket of tax, are we talking about the top 1% in Mongolia, or will this hurt the middle class as well, do you think?
Well, let's start small arithmetics. 100 million tugriks is $50,000 US.
Yeah.
For such expensive country like Mongolia, $50,000 US saving is not much for normal living. One. And plus there are only few thousand people having this much savings. Relatively poor country. But these people accept corrupt officials, thieves, dirty politicians. The remainings are people who earn the money. And now when the time comes, now they are decreasing your earnings, your opportunities. It is not the best way, because now we talk about most productive, creative, skilled people, income. And then who would like to have more than that 100 million tugriks? Yeah. Now they will divide saving accounts into pieces now. It's separate. There will be split of this savings. There will be again more gray economy. Instead of they will decrease immediately the deposits. Okay, maybe they will buy something, etc., etc. Again, there will be secondary serious consequences of that decisions. In terms of this apartments more than 150 square meter, this is one of the absurd decisions, because this country has a law of income on the real estate. But the thing is, the state-owned companies don't pay real estate tax. If they don't pay, then the rest don't pay, don't pay. So what's happening now, what should be happening is you should have that enforcement of this law. Everybody should pay 2% of your value of your real estate. But the problem is, because some in particular state-owned companies don't pay, we don't have proper valuation of real estate. That means the real estate sales on particular locations are not properly valued. If it is taxed correctly, and if it is in public domain informed, then everybody knows what is a true value. And they may have tax, but half of this tax revenue from real estate should go back to the location for maintenance, for developing infrastructure. Then we will have a serious town with better, truly valued locations, right? So that's Mongolia should do. Instead of doing and having tax on all the real estate, now they will go measure the size of each apartment. What they will do? They will divide the apartment, give to somebody else, or they write on somebody's name. So this sort of, I think, not very much productive approaches are happening. At the end, who has this more than 150 square meter apartments?
Yeah.
Not many. So basically, Mongolia has gone back to now socialism, where everybody must be poor and no difference. That's what the politicians basically doing, and we are not happy about that. And hopefully, their rationale will work, because that law is not yet adopted.
I think you're going to have the final word right there, because we've run out of time. We hope our briefings this evening will give you a head start when you enter the workday tomorrow, new work week.
Have a great week. Thank you.
Good night, all, Mbatar.